Good morning from sunny and virus-ridden Istanbul. This is Atilla Yeşilara broadcasting at Real Turkey channel. Thanks for watching, and as usual, if you like it, subscribe, or better, just share it with friends who may enjoy more knowledge about Turkey. I have been AWOL for a while, even though I wanted to do several videos because life in Turkey is just flowing at light speed, but I couldn't because thanks to our president, Mr. Erdogan, I got migraines that you wouldn't believe. I mean, I want to take a hammer and smash my brain open. So I went to see my neurologist who has, what is the correct word? She stuck 30 needles in my head, and it's called the brain Botox. You know, my head are swollen. I can barely see my eyes, but my migraine is gone. So I'm a migraine-free individual. And today, obviously, if you're following Turkey at all, the top topic is American President Joe Biden calling the incredibly sad and horrific events of 1915 regarding Anatolian Armenians genocide, which infuriated Turks and, of course, the Erdogan administration. Let me bring it up, the table of contents that I wrote up for this. Why is it important is the first thing I want to address. After all, I mean, Turkey has admitted that the Anatolian Armenians have been sent what we call a forced exile. They have been kicked out of the Anatolia proper and sent to Syria and other the then Ottoman provinces. An extremely arduous journey during which hundreds of thousands perished. There is no disagreement about that. In fact, the president sent his condolences to the patriarch of the Armenian society in Turkey, apologizing for the events of 1915. But genocide carries different implications, both sociologically, politically, also economically. Sociologically, obviously, it's a major human crime. It's a black mark on a nation, and Turks don't want to be recognized as descendants of an empire that carried out willing and willful destruction of a subject nation. Moreover, again, I'm not an apologist for Turkey. Obviously, you have watched my videos and you know how I feel about Turkey. But there are two opposing narratives here. For Armenians, their history is one of Turkish oppression, murder, looting, rape, and just tremendous loss. They call it Medzjetskern, I believe. I don't speak Armenian, but it's called the Great Disaster, and I agree with that viewpoint. For Turks, in particular for those who lived in northeast Anatolia alongside the Armenians by then, their history is full of events such as Armenian gangs raiding cities and villages and hamlets and killing poor innocent women and children while their men were fighting the First World War in some other fronts. Unfortunately, we will never know the full truth because the whole question of what really happened to Armenians, who started it, how culpable the Ottoman Empire was, what their true intention was when they sent Armenians to exile, during which most of them perished, has moved from forensics history to the realm of politics. When you declare an event in the history a genocide, historic debate ends. I mean, it's not worth discussing. In fact, in one of my previous articles, I used the word so-called genocide, and one of my audience asked me if I'm a Holocaust denier. In other words, whether I deny that Jews were massacred uh, by Nazis in Germany. I'm like, no, I mean, God, Nazis killed more than 6 million poor, innocent, unarmed Jews. How can I deny that? Neither do I deny that hundreds of thousands of Armenians died because of the actions of the Ottoman Empire. But as I've said, genocide is a whole different breed of an animal. But never mind these legal definitions and nuances. There's a very serious problem for Turkey when the President of the United States calls the affairs a genocide. To recall, a few months ago or last year, I believe the Congress passed a non binding resolution or law declaring the events a genocide. So, as far as the Turkish scholars tell me, genocide is now the law of the United States, which means that the Armenians can sue the Republic of Turkey as the successor of the Ottoman Empire for compensation and even for the return of their personal property, houses, etc. And that would mean that the Republic of Turkey would be dragged into lawsuits that would last decades, and it would be extremely costly. Whether we'll win or lose, anyone in the United States who has consulted an attorney would know what I mean. So anyhow, this is the background of it, and obviously Turkey has not been in good stead with the United States. We had a huge number of disputes, ranging from the presence of Pastor Fethullah Gülen in Pennsylvania, who is accused of orchestrating the 2016 coup attempt in Turkey, which failed, to Turkey's purchase of Russian-made S-400s, which is against NATO doctrine, the status of Kurds in northeastern Syria, right at our border. United States currently cooperates with Kurds to fight the remnants of ISIS. Turkey says actually the Kurdish entity there is a cover organization for terrorist PKK, and it poses a threat to Turkey. And then there's the Halkbank trial. I did a video on that with Mrs. Selva Tor, which you may wish to check. But it's a state lender which is currently on trial in a New York State federal court on accusations of money laundering for Iran, to put it briefly. So this is the final straw that may have broken the back of the camel, or the Erdogan administration. And as I broadcast this video, or as I tape this video, the Erdogan administration was planning retaliatory measures. Now, that's very important. Let me bring up the cover here again, because these could range from symbolic to drastic, or meaningful. Symbolic could be Turkey recognizing the genocide of Native Americans at the hands of the American government, something like that, or banning a couple of American officials from entering Turkey or whatever. That would be fair. I have nothing against it as an economist. It would probably appease, Turkish anger at the Americans to a certain extent. Or these retaliatory measures could be drastic. For instance, there are two major NATO assets on Turkish soil. One of them is the Incirlik Air Base. It's one of the biggest NATO air bases currently granted for the use of the United States. Turkish press tells me that in Monday's cabinet meeting, or perhaps in subsequent cabinet meetings, the Erdogan administration will debate whether it should be shuttered and American forces there expelled from the country. There's another installation which is as important as Incirlik, which is the Kurejic radar installation, which can listen to hit all the way to the hinterland of Russia and Iran, and obviously warn NATO very early on any kind of missile threat or on any kind of air raid. And it would be, a major loss for NATO if Turkey were to forbid the organization to use these assets. In fact, there are even some press reports which suggest that Turkey may leave the military wing of the NATO organization. That's possible. Greece and France did it in the past, which means that we no longer cooperate with NATO on a military basis. That means we don't join the maneuvers, drills, etc. But as far as the political aims of the organization goes, we're still cooperating. I don't see much use in these drastic measures, simply because they are more likely to hurt Turkey than the United States. NATO has already started building bases. I think United States is actually building them, but they will be for NATO use in regions and countries surrounding Turkey. For instance, in Erbil, northern Iraq, the Kurdish territory, in the Greek Cypriot administration, and in Greece, none of which will be big enough to substitute for Incirlik, which is really huge and strategically located. But I'm sure if you build a dozen smaller bases, they will do the job. And if Turkey were to leave NATO's military wing, will be open to blackmail by Russia and Iran. Again, I don't see much to gain from such a gambit. But the economic implications are even going to be worse. If Turkey were to openly clash with the United States and refuse to do a deal on S-400s and northeastern Syria, United States will simply follow up on the declaration of genocide with CAATSA sanctions. And CAATSA sanctions, you may be familiar with them, not because of the fact that they had been deployed against Turkey already, but because of Mr. Biden's latest decision to use them against Russia. American funds and other financial institutions can't buy Russian financial assets, bonds, I believe. Mr. Biden can do the same thing for Turkey. He can tighten the CAATSA sanctions with an executive order, barring American banks from making loans to Turkey, or American fund management companies from buying financial assets of Turkey. And that would be devastating. I have a few Turkish graphs, but I think the meaning would be clear. For one thing, further sanctions would cause a panic among those investors who are still invested in Turkish assets. Here, the blue line is the share of foreign investors in Turkish TL bond market. It's about 10%, roughly 180 billion liras, or something like $20 billion. And the red line, the red line is the bonds, and the blue line is equities. But in total, I think there is over $30 billion of financial investments by foreigners in Turkey. Even though not all of them are American, probably most of them would leave if the United States were to impose further sanctions on Turkey. But there is a bigger problem here, which is our foreign debt. Let me show you another table in Turkish again. This is the amount of foreign debt Turkey needs to pay or to refinance, and it's from Turkish Bloomberg, within the next 12 months. And it's $190 billion. Yes, Turkish treasury, banks, and non-financial institutions need to either pay off $190 billion or reborrow it, or pay off part of it and roll over the rest. Now, traditionally, over the last 2 years, Turkish entities refinance 80% of maturing debt. That's for every $100 that mature, they borrow $80 and pay back $20. But, if American institutions are missing from the scene, it stands to reason that some of the Asian institutions and Arab institutions would also be extremely unwilling to lend to Turkey or to buy Turkish assets. Let me put these numbers into a context. Let's say either because Turkish entities don't want it because it's expensive, or foreigners refuse to lend to Turkey, our refinancing or reborrowing ratio drops to 60%, which means within the next 12 months, we pay off 40% of $190 billion. That's roughly $70 billion, 70 some odd billion dollars. In comparison, the reserves, FX reserves of our central bank is something like $90 billion. And of course, when a bank or a non-financial entity wishes to pay off debt, it buys the FX from the Central Bank of Turkey. So, mutual sanctions or escalation of tensions through retaliatory measures would mean that there will be a massive outflow of foreign currency from Turkey, which could bring Turkey to the brink of a balance of payments or currency crisis. And either Turkey will have to call IMF for a standby loan, which is difficult if you have a public dispute with the United States, because the United States is a shareholder, a major shareholder in IMF, or impose capital controls, which means like China. You can transfer money out of the country to import things, but you can't transfer money out of the country for financial purposes. And that would be extremely, extremely painful for Turks who have been living in a flexible currency and free capital market system since 1987. Since 1987, I believe. This is really, if it comes down to a final countdown, Turkey is going to lose. There's no doubt about it. Or better phrase, Mr. Erdogan is going to lose, because Turks are not going to stand for it. Even though 99% of Turks would condemn Joe Biden for calling the events of 1915 a genocide, and would agree with Mr. Erdogan that some type of response is necessary. Going overboard is going to make Turkey much poorer. Now, you have to remember that after India and Brazil, Turkey has the highest number of COVID-19 cases on a population per head basis. Turkish lira is depreciating very rapidly, which leads to higher inflation. And our economy is barely growing. So on top of that, you have another clash with the United States, which leads to weaker currency, a recession, etc., etc., is extremely unpleasant to the Turkish people. And it could lead to political instability and early elections. And there's another thing. If United States were the only country that called the sad and deplorable events of 1915 a genocide, I would say, yeah, let's go punish them. do whatever that needs to be done because, they're setting a trend. That's not the case. Let's look at this map. Some of our quote unquote best friends have already recognized the genocide. I'm really pointing, well, you can't see my pointer, but Turkey's so-called strategic ally, Mr. Putin, is among them. Also our close friend, Iran. So not only are retaliatory, some of those needles that they stuck into my skull may have penetrated too deep. Retaliatory measures are unnecessary. They are also discriminatory because we haven't really imposed any sanctions on France, on Iran, or on Russia. Why United States? Well, the only good thing that comes out of this is that even though the audience is small, I'll have a permanent job as a YouTuber covering events of Turkey. And I hope that soon all of our difficulties go away. In the meantime, I want to thank everyone for watching this video. And for those who care to learn more about the Turkish economy and politics as well, there are 2 chapters about Turkish politics. Please check this great book. And at the bottom, there is a website where you can order it now at 30% discount. Turkish Economy at the Crossroads, edited by 2 great professors, both of whom I know, and written by 8 great economists. With these words, Atilla Yeşilara is checking out, saying goodbye from Istanbul.